I think the people that are basically integrating agents into a already robust software development lifecycle, those are the teams that I think are probably being the most successful.
I'm gonna kill them, protect me from the where CTOs share the tales and the comments. So start a few big names and the visions unfold. How many CTOs will share their stories untold?
Hey, Brad.
How's it going, Scott?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Should we record a podcast?
Let's do it.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. I'm Brad Heftegaub, and my co-host is...
Scott Polrad.
Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Well, I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about, Brad.
Yeah.
The first is I always introduce you as my trusty co-host, but then you
Oh,
just enter me as your co-host. And so I'm just wondering what's going on there.
are you feeling triggered over that? I apologize, sir. I consider you
No,
my trusty
I
co-host.
was just hassling you, Brad. Before we talk shop, can we talk sports ball?
Let's talk sports ball. I mean, this is going to get released like a month and a half after the Super Bowl, but we should still talk sports ball.
Okay. Did you care at all about the Super Bowl?
I watched it. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
it was super fun.
It was so fun.
It was really fun.
I could not figure out why anybody thought the Patriots had any chance.
I don't know either.
I mean, I just didn't think they had a chance. And
Yeah.
it was pretty obvious from the first seconds of the game that they had no chance. So there you go.
I would agree. We won't stay on this subject long. I just say I really enjoy football. I find it a very intellectually enjoyable game.
All right.
People say it's a chess match, and it's kind of like chess.
I I think that the way the Seahawks play the game,
Yeah.
I agree. I have you seen okay, well, as long as we're talking like sports ball, we can talk about like other memes that are out there about us. Have you seen the meme yet? Have you seen the meme where apparently a whole bunch of people did this where they had their this the tended to be like, male female couples, but it was like the big sports fan was forced, who's the football fan, was forced to look away from the screen while their partner described play by play of what was happening. And as soon as I spent 10 seconds watching one of those, the algorithm pushed like 100 others at me. And they were just absolutely hilarious to watch.
I'm gonna have to take a look for that.
It was
I
hilarious.
can tell you how that would go at my house.
Yeah.
I just don't think it would go very well.
It, well, that was kind of the
Well, I think the problem I have is not that Lisa wouldn't be able to describe what was happening, was that she would find the whole exercise so exasperating that she wouldn't want to do it in the first. She'd be like, "Really? You want me to do what?"
these were clearly like in the ones I saw, the partners were very much interested in the idea, and so it was mostly the sports fan exasperated at the non-sports fans' descriptions of what they were seeing. You know, like like they didn't know how to read like first and 10 or second and 5 or something like that. And
Oh,
so they were like, well, the like one of them was calling them the what was it like the Bluebirds versus the Pilgrims. That was what they were called. Oh, a pil. Oh, the pil. Oh, the Pilgrim guy just got. Oh, ooh, ow! That looked like that hurt. What happened? What happened?
this reminds me of two other things, one specific and one general. Very specific little pet peeve I have. If any of the 39 listeners out here have any relationship with NFL football production or college football, any sort of football production, it says on the screen the score, and then it says like first and 10.
Hmm.
And I wish it just said where the ball is at.
Right. Well, yeah,
First and 10 on the 40.
yeah,
Like, think of how much more information you would get just with that. And then you could do it with plus, I would do it like first and 10 plus 40 means you're on the other guy's 40. First and
right.
10 minus 40 means you're on your plus minus. And those three characters, plus and then two digits,
We'd make a huge
plus or minus, would create a tremendous amount of more information for about what is happening in the football game.
right. That's true.
So if
Well,
you
that was
if
another thing was the, how the on the yard lines there's like 40 and they like have hash marks pointing in the direction of the direction towards the goal that on that
yeah,
side.
yeah,
So a lot of these people that were not football fans were describing it. They're on the -40, they're on the -30 or something.
right,
And the fan was like the person that was not able to see the screen was like, there's no -40 yard line, or
right.
whatever. But
Okay,
anyway, it was pretty funny.
here's my big picture. Between the Super Bowl and the Olympics, which either started that weekend or the next year or something, NBC, that's who produced both of them. Their capacity, these are massive
Yeah.
productions
Yeah.
with, I mean, this we talk about software development here, right? But just to talk about the technology operation behind these
The
things and
orchestration.
the orchestration is just
Yeah, it's massive.
super impressive to me.
Yeah.
I actually I would love to learn about it just to understand how they do it.
How about the AI.com halftime commercial where they spent what I heard was they spent 70 million on the domain. They spent on the domain name AI.com. They spent another 10 millions on that ad and the whole website crashed. And it's basically a open claw wrapper for everyday people. That's what that app is. Open claw. It only existed like 3 weeks ago.
Wow. The truth is, I didn't see it.
Ah.
I was locked in on the game, and for a lot of the commercials, I kind of had to get up and go get some snacks and like let my energy level come down so that I didn't have a heart attack. Because I went to a friend's house. They were kind of having a little Super Bowl party, and then there was where the TV was, and over in the other area they had food. So I'd get up and go get some chips and dip and stuff.
Well, I'm trying to tie it back to the How Many CTOs podcast. So AI.com is basically just a wrapper. It's a wrapper on OpenClaw yeah, old Claude bot, whatever it's called these days, Moltbot, Claude bot, OpenClaw. It's just a wrapper on OpenClaw, and they just dumped all this money into a domain name and a Super Bowl commercial, and the site crashes, and people are disappointed.
And what do you think that they didn't like? Clearly, they did not engineer that system correctly.
I mean, I have to imagine this was just like a I mean, the whole concept that you're just going to make a website that somehow wraps OpenClaw. Like OpenClaw didn't exist a month ago. So they had to like invent this whole business model and try to launch this thing in a month. That's a huge undertaking.
But couldn't you just like put it in somewhere in AWS with some sort of auto scaling on there and
Oh
it
yeah,
magically
yeah,
works?
sure. Depends on like yeah, I mean there's still work to be done, but yeah, right.
But
Yes.
couldn't you just get AI.com to do that work for you?
That's how it should work, right?
Couldn't you just go to Lovable
And have
and
love maybe
say,
it was a
"Can
lovable app. That'd be funny.
can you make me this thing?" Like, isn't that how it works? Okay, here's something crazy. I know some people at TaskRabbit listen to this podcast, and I
Yeah.
know that one of them who listens to this podcast is going to be listening to this thing right I'm going to say right now.
Yeah.
I've now got people at TaskRabbit. I shouldn't say I've now got people. It's not me. We have now got people at TaskRabbit. Whatever. There are now people in the world using Lovable to make effectively PowerPoint presentations.
Did you hear about did I already say this? There's an MCP server that somebody built, right? MCP servers being the thing that allows the AI agents to go do these requests. Someone has built an MCP server called Rent a Human.
Oh, have I heard about it? Look, what business am I in right now?
Rent a Human.
I mean, yes. What is your impressions of Venture Beauty?
Oh man, I have so many thoughts. Where do you want me to start? Like,
Anywhere you want. You brought it up.
well, I mean, I think it's like there's a version of this that's like the beginning of the apocalypse, right? Like
Right. This is the
it's
beginning of the Matrix.
it's the robot exactly. The robots are basically renting the humans to do stuff for them. There you go. That's one thought I have. I think that another thought I have is that to your point, TaskRabbit is a totally valid, it's a gig economy, it's a totally valid business model and there's plenty of things that people want other need there's value in being say like I can do a task for you, whether that be helping you put a bookshelf together or some kind of like a courier service across town, right? Like all those things can kind of be done by these gig
I mean,
economy type
it's
systems.
not just TaskRabbit. I mean, there's Upwork and
Yeah.
all the other
Fiverr and
Fiverr. There's a million of them.
yeah, totally.
Um, so this one, I mean, we've looked at it. Obviously, that came out and that blew through TaskRabbit corporate like a storm. Like everyone knew about that in an instant.
Well, has
And
TaskRabbit built an MCP server? Or is that what you said something once about you were describing to your CEO what an MCP server was?
let me come back to that in a second because it's an interesting topic. Rent a Human is a database of profiles that you can access via an MCP server. It's not clear that they have a monetization model right
Yeah,
now. They'll figure it out. They'll take a cut of the transaction. They're not. It doesn't appear. What I'm saying is, it doesn't appear that they facilitate the transaction at the moment.
interesting. And I'm assuming that I'm just going to put my little, I'm going to wear my business hat a little bit, not my tech hat, right? Once you start actually trying to facilitate those transactions, you have a whole bunch of hard work to do around know your customer and validating that both sides of that marketplace are valid, right? So that's
Yeah,
that's
you have to.
obviously business. That's a business strategy like backlog that is much harder to solve than just I wrote some code to have a database of a bunch of profiles.
Yeah, when we think about it's not just TaskRabbit. This is TaskRabbit's the third gig economy marketplace I've worked on. And fundamentally, we think about our competitive advantages as, at least I think about it as your brand, because in a gig economy, in any economy marketplace, there needs to be trust. And so if people think, Craigslist doesn't have a lot of trust, they even got, signs in there, watch out for these scams, don't send
Yep.
money, right? So your brand is really important. Quality of your supply, like which influences your brand, meaning like are the workers in your marketplace, the people offering services, the
Are they
humans,
are they
do they
have quality? Can they actually deliver on what you claim they're doing, whether that's a dog walker or a car driver?
yeah, well, let's talk about car drivers. I mean, for a while Uber had a problem with assault and
Yeah,
and so on and so forth. And they probably had a very few number of incidents, but it's just a spread, oh my God, watch out, your Uber driver's gonna kill you. And
yeah,
now they've got all sorts of tools that they have in their app and so forth to give people safety. So the your well, that actually leads to the third piece, and then your technology, right? And so to get a bunch of people to sign up and put a profile out there to say, I'm available for work is clearly easy. You and I could vibe code that by the end of this podcast,
right.
right? And
I have an agent working on it right now.
yeah, and they say they have 500,000 profiles in there or something like that. And I got to assume a ton of those are fake because that's a big problem that you get.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, they haven't gotten to the hard part of the business yet. The software is the easy part of the business. In fact, this is kind of a segue into the CTO thing. For a lot of our businesses, most of the businesses I've worked in, the problem has not been the technology. We have had the know-how, the ability to put together the technology. We haven't had the know-how of what the customers wanted and how to execute it on a way that did things that delivered on the needs people had. Now, one exception actually was kind of where you and I were together, which was Healthcare Co. I don't know if we ever said that. I guess we could say it. It's out of business. 98.6. We
Right.
didn't. We didn't have the technology. That was cutting edge, trying to figure out how to do essentially AI for doctor visits, and you know, if we were doing open 98.6 today, it would be a different game, right? Because of the advancements in LLMs.
For sure. Well, but by the way, that's another good example though, where if the sort of through line there is the technology is one piece, but the rest of the business is a whole other piece. Like the technology
Yeah,
doesn't matter without the business. And in the case of 98.6, in the case of health tech, one of the challenges that very much exist is that health related services are very tightly regulated by the Food and Drug Administration. And so, I remember at 98.6, one of the challenges that we faced there was if we built a tech that was doing too much, then
yeah,
it goes into the realm of essentially becoming a medical device. And once it becomes a medical device, then all of a sudden you have to go through lots of additional like bureaucratic burden, right? And so the
that's right.
tech piece of it was hard, but it was not the whole problem. Like
That's right.
there's other things.
So you asked the question, are we building an MCP server? And that is, I literally was in a meeting earlier today talking about that. MCP server is to the 2026 what Facebook integration
Yep.
was to 2010,
Yep. Valid.
which is like, well, what do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah.
And we were having a discussion like, well, who is the customer for this server? Right?
Yeah.
Are we exposing this externally to people? Is this for so it kind of it's a riff on the same thing, which is like Yes, the engineering team can build you an MCP server. We can do that. What kind of what do you want to do with this thing?
Yeah, what actions do you want that server to have?
Yeah, and we were able to get to that answer. But there's actually, a half dozen things it could do
Yeah.
for different user segments. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So on in other AI news, here's one for you. So one of the teams that I work with, they finally found some MCP servers for the tooling that they use regularly that has been a big unlock for them.
hmm,
So, a simple example of this is like we have an MCP server for our observability platform, right? Well, that all of a sudden was an unlock when they were trying to fix a bug. It was some obscure bug that only happened to some random customer. Boom, let the agent do the deep dive into the observability, find the evidence, and come back with an answer.
unless anybody's watching the video of this, they couldn't see me just put my hand on my forehead. I was just having oh my goodness, why didn't I ever think of that moment? How many times have you spent digging through logs trying to correlate one thing with this thing? And, oh, I think look, these things happen. They're only a few milliseconds apart. It must have been the same thing. Oh, I spent hours of my life doing that.
The agents are so good at this. Like you can give them you and well, the agents already like you could just dump a log file on them and ask them to do some analysis and they can come back with like mermaid diagrams showing exactly like all the events that thread together that cause the problem. But now just like don't even bother downloading the log file. Just point them at the observability MCP server and let it go do the searches that it needs. Let it because it can go look at the code to see what observability signals theoretically exist in the code. And then it can go and just hit the observability backend and come back with like all the various, actually the evidence for you. So like that's a huge unlock that one of the teams I'm working with just unlocked for themselves. And it's just like they're like, pigs in shit, basically. They're so happy.
Makes me want to sing right now. Okay, I have two thoughts to share here.
Yeah.
These are not that serious. The first is, do you remember a tool from back in the olden times provided for free by Microsoft called Log Parser?
Vague memory of that. Yes.
It was a simple command line tool. It allowed you to query structured text files. So you could have you didn't tell it what structure it was, whether it was tab delimited or comma delimited, or if it had its own structure, you could give it a template. But mostly they were just comma CSV files. And so you could just write a SQL-like syntax to run queries against log files. And you could do joins across different files too. It's super cool. And this is like 1998 to 2002 kind of era. But I remember, I was a pro at that thing in terms of spelunking through
Yeah.
server logs to try
Totally.
and figure out what was going on. Okay, but at the same era, this thing happened. This guy I worked with, who I really liked, his name was Alan Taylor. Alan, if you're listening to this, it's been a long time. Hello. Alan, by the way, he ended up leaving the company I was working on. Him and his wife moved to, this is pre-remote working, of course. They moved from Seattle to Boston, where he went to work for the Boston Globe. And the Boston Globe had this feature called The Big Picture, which was basically just effectively one blog post a day featuring one beautiful or interesting AP photograph.
Oh,
And Alan did this. Like this was a skunkworks project that he was a computer programmer. He did this because his observation was we had all these AP photos coming through the Boston Globe all the time. And I kind of knew about this blog technology. So I kind of like just put one up every day because they're cool, like here's an eagle catching a fish or here's a forest fire or whatever. And that became a big thing. It became a big
yeah.
piece of their newspaper. Anyway, I walk into Alan's office one day and he's got this book on his desk, one of the O'Reilly books with the animals on front. I don't remember what the animal was, but it said Ajax on it. And
Hmm.
I was like, what's Ajax? And he explains it to me. We all know what Ajax was. It's basically a web page being able to make an XML request and render stuff on the page. This other guy I work with named Mark Puckett, who, as far as I know, who's still in the Seattle area.
Mark, if you're
And
listening, howdy.
Mark, if you're listening, howdy. It's been too long. Mark, consider Mark a fellow friend in the software world. He had just months earlier, he was working on some app and just made a thing where he was just like, oh, look, I figured out how to make this little thing. What was it called? The X and X HTTP
Yeah,
request. Look, I
XHTTP.
could go request it. He called it the targeteer. That's what he called it. He just created this little internal tool, which was this web page that could go get data and render. He just called it the targeteer. And when I saw Alan's book and he explained that to me, I was like, hey, we already did that. And the lesson that taught me, and I think you're getting to it with the observability stuff that you're talking about. Now that we know now, when we figure out these clever new things, we got to brand them.
Yeah.
If Mark had called the targeteer something sexy like Ajax and went out and put a blog post up about it and say, "Hey, I've got this
Everyone would
new
have
way
done
of
it.
doing thing," he would have been the Ajax guy instead of
Right.
whoever invented Ajax. But he
Right.
just did it and just, well, I'm clever. I figured out how to do this thing. Let's move on with life.
Yeah.
So you got to brand your observability splunking. You got to give that a name.
I'm sure that we're not the first one to do it, but I hear you.
But we're in an era. But I guess the point is, just like the web in 2000, or the
Yeah, we're
2000
moving,
era,
everything's moving so
where
fast.
we're in an era where things are moving fast and evolving fast, and people are going to be figuring out things just out of necessity and cleverness. They're going to be figuring out the next Ajaxes,
Yeah.
right?
I think you're right. Well, here's so to sort of pull on that thread a little bit further. So this same team, another one of the developers, and this is one of the developers who I'd say was like kind of early on, he was a little bit AI skeptical, but he's a full convert now. And he was just telling the team like he set up a Signal MCP server. And so basically when his when his coding agent is running along, if it runs into a problem, it sends him a signal message.
Mhm.
And then on his phone, on Signal, he's able to basically just respond to the agent and tell it what to do. And then the agent gets back to work and keeps working.
Now,
So
why Signal and not Slack?
that was the API that he chose. He could have done it in Slack as well, right? So it's like he liked that particular form factor. And he didn't go full OpenClaw. So he's not running like OpenClaw, like giving it credentials. He just said, oh, look, there's already this MCP server. So when the agent has a question, and when it needs to do something, it can ask me a question and it does it. It asks me over here, and boom, I keep going. And yeah, totally. He could have used Slack. He could have used messages, whatever. He used Signal because that was the tooling.
Even think about MCP. Who came out with MCP? Is that a Google thing?
I think that was actually
Anthropic?
probably I think it was OpenAI that first
We
suggested
got
it.
to look that up. Anthropic.
Okay. There you go. Sorry, Anthropic. I gave unfair credit to your competitor.
You think that Anthropic spent a lot of time internally thinking about this, blah, blah, blah? Or do you think it was just like some guy who was like, I'm just going to, hey, I made an API so that this thing could talk to this other thing. Oh, yeah,
Yep.
what do you call it? I call it, I don't know, it's a model. I'm giving it context. I guess it's the model context API. Well, it's not an A, but it's not, whatever.
Right.
That's how it
Well,
got invented.
and so on a recent episode that you didn't join in on, but Philip Rosedale was on, and he and I were talking about this, and he made the observation that MCP, of course, was the master control program in Tron, the thing that basically was the fascist government that or fascist entity that took over everything in Tron.
Yeah, so maybe that's how they got it. But I think the same point is those guys did something and were smart enough. The point I'm trying to make is they were
They
smart
branded it.
enough to brand it and
Yeah.
put it out there.
Yeah. Totally.
Now, I think there are competing protocols for this, but somehow the world's imagination
Well,
captured
that's the
MCP.
classic. Yeah, well, it's a classic like early yeah, to your point, right? Like early on it was like are we doing like, plugins to internet browsers used to be like the thing, right? It was Netscape had their plugin API and Internet Explorer just used
Hmm.
COM because they already had, I
Hmm.
outer unknown and all that stuff, right? And there was competition for who was going to do plugins. Of course, plugins don't Chrome uses, nobody really does plugins to be in pages
Extensions, they're now
anymore.
extensions,
Now
right?
they're extensions. Um, Another one that is interesting in this space is again one of the team that's like embraced this AI model where they all treat the AI agents just like team members that work for them, and they have to follow the same CI/CD pipeline that developers do, human developers do. One of the developers was saying to me in this, midway through the sprint, he's just like, "Yeah, I want my agents working 24 hours a day. I want them working on, I want them, and it's like, let's have them read off our Jira board. Let's have them pick cards off the Jira board. Let's have them, do the work. Let's have them submit to PR. Let's have the other agents do the code review. Nobody's allowed to merge until a human looks at it and merges it, but let's have them follow our same CI/CD using the same practices we do, same SDLC that we have, but the tools for them to do that are available.
That's what you're doing. You got agents
That's
working 24 hours a day.
I don't know that he's fully gotten it to that point. I don't have agents working 24 hours a day, but I definitely am. I definitely have agents doing all of the pieces of the SDLC, and I just kind of monitor them as a manager. And that's
Wow.
what all of the developers, that's what all the developers on the team are doing. And the more that we can get them to glue, essentially follow the script of like, hey, you open a PR, you make your change, you have to lint it, you have to run the unit test, you have to add new unit tests, you have to make sure it compiles, you have to submit a PR. Once you submit a PR, request a code review by the other code review agent. Come back 5 minutes later, look at the comments on that, address those comments. When you're all ready with that, let me know. Like that, like that's essentially where we're getting to.
So what's your brand name for this?
Well, I think that it's just agents is all they call it. This is how the top performing teams are working. This is how they work.
So give a name to how
I
they
don't
work.
have a name. I'm not a marketing genius. What's the name for this thing? It's called Agent SDLC, Agent Development Lifecycle. There you go. The ADLC.
ADLC. That's it. We've just invented the ADLC, Brad.
ADLC. Let's go. That's the title of this episode, the ADLC.
You think I'm joking?
No, you're not. I know you're not. I know you're not joking. Our producer will make sure to title this episode the ADLC.
The ADLC is just a layer on top of this new thing called SDD.
Yep.
And what is SDD?
Spec-driven design,
Or
spec-driven
what is it?
development.
What is it really?
It's just writing a spec is all it is. Just a bunch of text files, right? Saying write a spec first and then break it down in tasks and then work on the tasks. So,
Yeah.
but you're right. You're right. It's coined now as SDD. And of course, when someone says, "Oh, I'm following SDD principles," and it's like, "Oh, wait, what?" And then you got to go look it up, and you look it up, and you go, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's what we were all doing." But you just gave it a name,
Just like the targeteer.
just like the targeteer versus Ajax.
So let's ask this question. If we want ADLC to become a thing so we can be the ones that write the O'Reilly book, before I ask this question, I want to interrupt myself. When we put out our O'Reilly book with an animal on the front,
What's the animal gonna be?
what's the animal going to be?
I don't know. I
It,
haven't all the animals been used by this point.
that's let's ask AI. We
Any
can do it
animals
right
left
here.
on O'Reilly
Are there
books?
any? There must be animals left for O'Reilly books.
I asked Claude what animals have not been used for an O'Reilly book cover.
Well, according to Google's, I assume Gemini, there are many animals left.
I mean, there's
Um,
so many animals in the world, you would think there ought to be several. How about raccoons? Have raccoons been used? Well, they've used over 1,200.
I said I want an animal related to skiing. Okay, here it is, the Arctic fox. Oh wait, it's already been used.
This has gone off the rails complete. I
How
saw
about how about the mountain goat?
that's not been used yet.
I mean, I don't think so. It's hard for me to say. Or penguin. I want penguin.
Penguins have been
Oh no,
used
penguin's been used.
100 times.
Rats.
Penguins, of course, have been
Okay.
used.
Okay, so the question is, this is a practical question, and we need a marketer on it. We need to get a marketer on here. If we want ADLC to become a thing, what do we do?
We should have a podcast where we talk about it, and we gotta have a white paper or a blog post as well. We gotta basically describe it.
No. Yes, all those are true. However, we also need a GitHub repo with
Yes,
a README and a command line tool that you can download to do ADLC.
yes, you're right.
Because I don't know, the way I learned about spec-driven development was to go into Spec Kit. I don't know, like Google or someone's produced this thing called Spec Kit.
Yep,
And I was like, what's SDD? I got to learn about this. And someone
yep,
said Spec Kit. And I was like, okay. And that's where I learned. I was like, oh, I see it. It's just a process for doing this.
yeah, totally. Well, there you go.
So how do we, yeah, that's it. We're going to make an ADLC.
ADLC GitHub repo. There you
Who
go.
can type it faster? Is it going to
We
be in
should get
your
off this.
profile or Mo
We should
profile?
we should get off this podcast call and start working on that right away.
We need to sit on this podcast so no one else does it.
Well, we definitely should not release this podcast till we have the GitHub repo up. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah,
I
that'll just
think you're
make
right.
they'll make the Super Bowl joke that much funnier. Here's what I think. Okay, so let's try to pivot this back to some interesting conversation for
I
our
think this is
listeners.
legitimate. It's probably
No,
not
no, hold
interesting
on a
for
second.
us.
Hold on a second.
Okay,
Let's keep
here's what's
no, let's keep
interesting
talking
for our
about
listeners.
ADLC. Hold on, let's keep talking about ADLC for a second. But I just want to I want to pull on this thread a little bit. So here's my current working hypothesis. My working hypothesis is that there are three camps of developers using AI. The first camp is the, I'm going to just label them the skeptics, right? So
Hmm.
they're dabbling, maybe using it for some minimal kind of like prompt, kind of like automatic text completion, like
Hmm.
a sort of somewhat fancier version of like autocomplete type stuff. And they're really like hesitant to sort of like really dive into letting the agent write any code. Okay.
Hmm.
On the way other end of the spectrum is the vibe coders, right? So they're just like full vibe coding it, where they're just like throwing out random ideas and just letting the bot run and come back with it. And they're not really looking at it from a engineering mindset perspective. And then there's this third camp, which I'm saying I think is the people that are the winners. When we talked a couple episodes ago about like the K-shaped economy of using AI agents, I think the people that are basically integrating agents into a already robust software development lifecycle, those are the teams that I think are probably being the most successful. So first of all, what do you think of my hypothesis? And are there other types of users of AI agents out there?
Yeah, I think those are the three that I can think of. I mean, I think there's variations of depth in each of those areas. And I think the third area, which is really the through line to me between SDD, spectrum and development, and ADLC, which is the agent development lifecycle, is that what we're seeing now, 12 months later, right? We had the explosion a year ago. 12 months later, what we're seeing is professional software engineers turning this into practice,
Hmm.
right? Saying, okay, we've got this powerful new tool and we know that the way to build software is through structure and guardrails. And I don't want to use the word process. That's not quite the right word for what I'm trying to express. But that's what the reason we have SDLCs is we know that having a pattern that you follow over and over again allows you to produce better software because you can iterate on the pattern. And so what we're seeing is the community trying to figure out, okay, we got the lightsaber is like wild. It's like the hose where it's on too fast and it's just water springing everywhere. We're trying to get it under control through these professional software development practices so we can aim it exactly where we want it to go. And so it produces what we want. So we're kind of trying to take a very wild, non-deterministic type of thing and turn it into something that is predictable. I said wild and non-deterministic. I should say wild and unpredictable and turn it into something predictable because for our profession, that's how we do a good job is have predictable patterns that we follow over and over again that we can iterate on and improve and refine. We were goofing around earlier in this podcast. I was talking about log parser, right? And how I used to go splunk around in logs. Well, now you've got tools like Datadog or whatever. Your whole systems for this. It's been refined and refined and refined over the years. And so we're entering another phase of this adoption cycle where we're saying, okay, how do we take this thing and turn it into a professional tool? And ultimately, I think you talk about the K-shaped economy and the winners. Yeah, the folks in that last bucket are going to crush the vibe coders by 100 to 1. And they're going to crush the skeptics by 100 to 1 because they're not only going to be producing, they're going to be producing at vibe coding volumes with professional software quality and be really effective.
Yeah,
But I'd say the last thing I'd say, and I even recognize that I'm saying this, my voice has taken a more serious turn. It changes the job.
it does. Absolutely.
It changes the job. It is not a coding job anymore.
You know, 100% agree. And actually, I have two other thoughts about this that we haven't yet touched on that I think are interesting. And maybe this dovetails nicely into it changes the job. So in two of the organizations that I'm working with, the developers are now moving so fast that the product owners actually are having a hard time keeping up with coming up with ideas.
I believe that.
And so I think that's really interesting. And months ago, you and I talked about the implications of that and the fact that that might mean, you need fewer developers. I think you posed the question, well, or maybe you need more product managers or you need more ideas. So
Yeah.
what I think is interesting is that's one of the ways that I think it changes the job. And and as a matter of fact, I'm seeing this in the organizations I'm working with, where effectively the developers are now coming to the table with product ideas
Yeah.
because now they if they're already sort of like entrenched in the product, understand the product really well, they're coming up with ideas and they can basically bring those ideas to fruition incredibly fast now, right? And offer them essentially to product owners to say, what if we did this? And I already have it working. Right? Like in the last,
Yeah.
basically in the last 2 weeks, I have seen very small engineering teams take on tasks that the product owners thought would take them weeks to months to do. And the developers have high quality developers, strong developers using the agent development lifecycle philosophy
Mhm.
have cranked out these month-long projects in a matter of days.
Yeah. So, it's interesting here because to some degree, I have two thoughts in response. I like where you're going with this. To some degree, coding was only a small portion of the job.
Yes.
More, it was a lot at the lower levels. When you're beginning your career, it's coding, right? You're getting a ticket, you're coding it. But as you progress, it became a lot more about understanding the requirements. Well, if you want to push it all the way, understanding the customer needs, understanding the requirements, and the design, right, of how to create a scalable system. And then coding was the last piece. And if you did those first pieces well, the coding often was just sort of downhill sledding.
Yep.
And it's just making the coding piece away. But the other thought that comes to mind is agile software development
Yeah.
and Scrum. And what you're really saying is, I don't know if you're really saying it, but what you're inspiring me to think is, gosh, maybe ADLC is really bringing the promise of agile software development, the promise of Scrum to true fruition. Because really, you can say to an engineer, hey, here's an idea we have. And they can say, great, I need a 2 week sprint to go put together a proof of concept. Let's come back and look at how it is. And then at least for your online services, like I've always been involved with, then it is, what does your experimentation framework look like so that you can get something out in front of customers and get real input on it sooner? And then that in turn feeds in a little bit to your culture. Is your culture willing to do stuff like that? To say,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know, this engineer and this product manager came up with this idea, and now we're going to go put it in front of our customers to see what happens. Pretty fascinating. That's actually pretty fascinating in terms of what it means for this business.
Yeah. That was my first point. And then the other thread you have to pull on is, again, the teams that I see that are moving super fast, they don't have QA teams.
Oh,
And they
forget about it.
and their own and the developers own the QA, right? So it's all about like the accountability. Like there is so much more accountability on the lines of code that you make in that pull request are like as the engineer that worked with these AI agents as part of the agent development lifecycle, like agents need to be doing as much testing as possible, and you need to be able to validate that the testing that the agents are doing really does manifest correctly. And so that's the other unlock that at least one of the teams I've seen has solved with MCP servers is there's these MCP servers for doing basically like running a headless Chrome or running a headed Chrome, which is like will fire up your web server, log in, do all kinds of things. And like literally, I was just testing this out the other day. I just asked the MCP server to just like log into the application. That's all I told it. I told it email and a password. I told it to log in, and it doesn't need any more instructions than that, right? And it knows how to go do it.
Yeah. The last time I had QA was 2009.
Yeah.
The company I'm at now, TaskRabbit, we have some QA engineers because of some legacy reasons and code. But I've found for the longest time, having your engineers do QA or peer QA across each other is 100 times more effective.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like in this world where the engineering can move as fast, so fast, it can move so fast, you don't have time to play the game of telephone to talk to some department somewhere. Like no, you need to be doing it like live in the seat.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And there's something to be said for it forces some other really healthy behaviors, right? You get your healthy test automation behaviors. You also get your healthy observability and monitoring behaviors, and you get your healthy rollback behaviors.
Yep. And if you've got like, and again, it sort of like encourages you to do things like have a really good, development environments that you can run locally, right? Like have a solution for something like, ephemeral environments or something like that. Let the, like, if you could tell the agent to make a change, to know what all of its automated tests that it should run and pass, that it needs to update those. And also, if you can tell it, hey, look, if you once you have your PR up and running, you will get access to an ephemeral environment. Go run like end-to-end tests against it using this, like using your own description of the test, right? You just added a new feature to have a, mic mute button. Okay, go
Mhm.
test that. Like
Right.
you just added the feature, go test it in the full end-to-end solution to see that it worked correctly.
Or you use the ADLC. Let's talk about how you would test that.
Yeah.
Let's make a plan for testing it. Yeah, and then there's some other parts. Your deployment story might change in terms of to test. You have canary deploys, blue green, all that kind of stuff, right? Those become more valuable.
Yeah, and so again, like I think what you're basically I think that we're in violent agreement on this, which is
100%. I'm not going to disagree with you.
yeah, so we'll summarize it for the listeners. If you've already got excellent engineering best practices around a software development lifecycle, have your agents start using that software development lifecycle. That's
Hmm.
the agent development lifecycle, ADLC. And that means, you've got clean processes for how you evaluate the whole, the product ask to the implementation plan, to the code itself, to the validation of the code, to the verification of the code through some audit cycles, like whatever if you've got SOC compliance, like what are your rules around validating that the code matches your software security requirements, like all of that stuff. Hold the agents just as accountable as you would the human engineers. Make them
Yeah.
follow that same cycle.
It's interesting. I had a conversation today with our head of design who wants her designers to be able to make, front end type changes. And she was kind of trying to figure out the process, like would it have to get code reviewed, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I'm totally supportive of this. Done it with designers before. I think it's great. But you're going to operate just like the rest of our engineers. We'll get your designers set up with a local development environment. They'll follow our process. They can go to the engineering troubleshooting channel if they got questions, just like everyone else does, and be happy to have you submit code pull requests. It's the same with the agents.
Yeah, yeah,
Just follow the process.
yeah, and one of my more leaning in um product owner, visionary founder type people, he's basically like, boom, asking agents to go build stuff using the, kind of the GitHub. We use GitHub they use GitHub, that team uses GitHub, and it's like, uh, yeah, submit a ticket, ask Copilot to start working on it. GitHub's added these chat mechanisms, but he's just like, yeah, all the tooling exists, so it can't go wrong, and if it doesn't pass lint, then he says, you don't pass lint, you got to fix that, and if it doesn't pass the unit test, hey, it's not passing the unit test, you got to go fix that. And it's just like, yeah, he's got the guardrails. He's got the guardrails of all of our existing, CI/CD and SDLC, and so he just lets an agent go work in that playground, and he's confident that he'll get what he wants at the end. So there you go.
Well, Brad, the ADLC.
The ADLC.
I love it.
Yeah.
This has
Awesome.
been a fun one today. We
Yeah,
covered a lot of ground.
we did.
We started with nothing and we ended up with the future of software engineering, the
There you go.
ADLC.
The ADLC. All right. Good talking to you, Scott.
Good talking to you, Brad.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Heftigal. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.